Hey, I'm back for another video on Tanstack Start. I dropped the video last week. It's kind of my first foray into it. Now this is my second one. This is going to focus on authentication. So first of all, if you find this helpful, check out the previous video, like and subscribe. I have a couple of more that I'm going to do on Tanstack Start. I'm really starting to enjoy TanStack Router. I never used it before. So I might actually just do a couple on using TanStack Router without TanStack Start. But please make sure you like, subscribe so you can see more of this. But my normal journey when I'm trying to learn something is to go to the documentation. So that's how I ended up here at TanStack Start. And then it says try the alpha. Once again, reminds everyone this is alpha, it's still changing. And I zoomed on down here to start examples DIY auth. Fired this join up, and it's using Stack Blitz in the back. While this is loading up, it threw a couple of errors and things like that. But you know, the next thing I do also is I start to poke around the code. And I hopped in here and I saw like it's got this post stuff going on. There's some routes in here. There's this use mutation hook, which I'm not really sure what it's doing. These components here are kind of default components. This default catch boundary not found. This auth component looked like a wrapper that was integrated with this mutation, trying to do a bunch of other things, and I was like, whoa, this is too much for me. When I'm trying to learn something, I like to keep it simple. So I took this project, I exported it from StackBlitz, downloaded it, stripped it down to its bare bones, put it back together, and added some documentation, and that's the code that I'm going to walk through today. And that's what this is back here. And I'll just take you through the app that I built. And this is the simple app that I built. So let's walk through what I built first. And like my other video, I will post all the source code also. You can check out in the link below. You'll see the link to the previous video that I did and the source code that goes along with that. So we have this unauthenticated page. This is where you log in. I've seeded the database. We're using Prisma. I've seeded it with an admin user. So I have this admin example, and I have a password, admin, password, and then I can log in. And then when you're authenticated, it shows you what the role is. This role is admin, user ID, and the email. Admin's also the person's name, so it's kind of pulled that from the database. It redirected appropriately to this page. If I try to go back to the route, that was interesting. If I try to go back to just the route, you can see it will continue to take me back to the home page because it identifies that it has a user. If I log out, it redirects me back to home. And then if I try to get to this protected page again, home, I don't know why it kind of throws that little error. But once again, this is alpha code, so these are other things to investigate. But you can see how it just constantly brings me back to my login page. So that's the app. Nothing more, nothing special. I did add in the, well, as I'm talking about that, I might as well show you the code. So let's kind of move this out of the way. And let's start to look at some code. Let's make this bigger since we have the space. So what I was about to go into was kind of my user object. I am using Prisma in this video as my ORM. If we look at my schema, we can see we have just a user object, email, password, role, so I can support users and admins. Because in the second video, I'm going to go a little bit deeper and show you how you can control access based on roles and do some other things based on roles with TanStack Start and TanStack Router. All right, so I have my user object, email, password, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to quickly go over some of the stuff that was covered in the last video. I'm not going to go into it as the same detail as I did in the last video, so you might want to check out that video if you want to understand how to just get TanStack Start working. So I have a Prisma schema, I have my seed file that I mentioned, and in my seed file, I just add a admin user, so I have someone who can log in, and I set the password to admin password. That's what my seed file does. So then the next thing, let's just start where the app starts. So the app will start off in, so we go to routes, routes, root. This is the root of the application. This is where everything starts off. I've also tried to document all of my functions and augment them. Of course, I'm using Copilot to kind of generate the first set of documentation around these functions, then I kind of augment them. All right, so just a couple of things are happening here. So in this before load on this route, on this root route, we're fetching a session user to see if we have a user object, and we're sticking it in the context for this before load route. It's needed in the next version of the application, because in the next version of the application, I'm going to have down here in my root document, I'm going to have a header, and I need the user information for the header. So I just kind of left this here. So what this will do is, if there is a user, it will stick the user in the page context, and I'll have access to the the router context, and I'll have access to the user down here in my root document to kind of put the user information in the header. But just for a little bit more, clarity, let's take a look at our fetch users, our fetch session user, so we can see what it's doing. All right, so here we are inside of my auth file. I didn't want to hop here yet because then I got to explain what it is. So I'll explain the function first, and then I'll explain the file. So this is, I probably should move all of these to a utility function, to a utility service instead of kind of embedding them in this file, but this is where they are now. So this fetch session user is a server function. This was covered in the first video, and we created this server function. We use this utility called use app session, and that gets me the session object. So we can see here, and as it says, I should probably change this password, but this is coming from our server right here, you can see. And this gets me my session object. So if I go back here, and then if I have a session, and what this code is doing is saying if I don't have session data, then I leave, which means I'm not logged in. A session was never created. If I do, I return the session data. And the way my session is set up, my session data contains the session user. And if I go back here, you can see my session user will contain the email, the role, and the user's ID. So that's what's happening right at the start of my root. Okay, so that's what's happening in the root page. Then we'll go from the root page, you will go to the index page. And if we look at the index page, it's a route that we've created, set up like we did the routes last time. It's default. I just call it the basic home page. It also does this before load here. I'm still playing around. Like I said, I'm learning this like everybody else. Not sure if I need this in both places, but at a minimum, I need this here because here's where I'm redirecting. So I'm fetching the session user like I showed previously. If I have a user, then I redirect to my home page. My home page is my authenticated page. Otherwise, I just stay here and I load this basic home page. This basic home page is not authenticated. The home page is authenticated. And as you can see, I just kind of render your welcome home, tell you you're not logged in, give you the ability to navigate to the login page. Okay, so let's check out the login page. Same as creating the route, no magic here. The real magic's inside the login component. As for this login component, this is pretty much, like I said, I took the bulk of this code from the sample and then kind of simplified it, for lack of a better word. Like I said, it was using some mutations and a bunch of other stuff that wasn't relevant to what I was trying to figure out. So just at a high level, let's start at the top. So this is our component. I need my router. I'm keeping track of my state of my actions. So I'm using this one component to either sign in or sign up. And then I'm tracking some error information here. Here's my server functions that I'm defining. The reason I'm wrapping them with this use server function is that inside my functions, I'm throwing redirects I'm throwing redirects so that I can go to different pages using the router from my server function. And from what I understand in the documentation, the only way for the redirects to work properly is if they are wrapped in this use server function. Now, I might be understanding the documentation incorrectly. Anybody who knows better, please leave a comment and let me know, but this is what I have done. And since it's how I'm learning, it's like if you learn a bad habit, you just stick with it until you learn otherwise. So this is my bad habit that I've learned. I am getting Zod validation errors back, and so that's what this guy is doing. And it's going to hold those errors. So we'll go back to the functions after I kind of walk through what's happening in the code. Okay. So here's kind of the code. It's just a simple form. I take a username, a password. If the actions sign up, then I capture like the first name and the last name also. And then the magic happens really down here in this toggle action button. So let's go take a look there. So simple component, really all this does is it toggles the action between sign in and sign up so that when you click the on submit, it knows if it should be signing in the user or signing up the user. So that's really all this button does. So let's go back to my login. So when you hit the submit, it calls the on action button change. And let's go up to the top. The on action button change will set what the appropriate action is. And then when the submit's done, we'll start with the sign in first, since that's what we've already demonstrated. So let's scroll up to the sign in code, handle sign in code, prevent default, clear out any error messages. I'm calling my login function that I wrapped with the use server function up above. And in this example, I'm passing form data to my server function. You could pass a different type of payload, but for here, I just wanted to pass in the form data so I can kind of demonstrate a couple of other things. So here I'm pulling off the form data, not doing validation here. I guess I'm doing validation on the create account. So here we're using our Prisma code that we created. I'm finding the user based on the email address. I'm pulling back this additional email. Probably should get all the information, but right now I'm just getting the ID, email, password, and the role. If I didn't find a user, I am throwing this error. Well, I'm returning this error message. Otherwise, hashing the password, matching the password. If the passwords don't match, return error. Otherwise, continue. Create a new session. Once again, this session stuff's coming from the server, I'm going to say it wrong, Vinxi server, well, that's the server that it's coming from up here. Because remember, before I showed you my use app session, and inside my use app session, the server is managing all of our session stuff for us. Okay, so let me get back to where I am. So we're in my login function. I create my session, and then I create my session, and then I stick everything that I want in my session here with this session update. And so I'm taking the email, the role, and the ID the person found, and then I'm throwing my redirect here, and this home route is the authenticated route. And then that's how you end up on the authenticated home page, which I will show you, and then also explain this _auth. So here's my home page, and this is my authenticated home page. Well, now let's talk about this auth thing that we got going on here. So I did Expo coding before, and I played with the Expo router, and the Expo router had this kind of you could kind of group things together with the parens around a route name. It seems like you can do that with this underscore. I stand corrected. The underscore is allowing you to access the route without saying _auth in front of it. So if you look back at the page here, so let me log in again. you can see that I don't have to say underscore auth here. So what's happening is that because it's underscored, it ignores it in the path name. And so I just need to say home. But what the underscore does what this underscore auth allows me to do is I have this other file down here called underscore auth.tsx, which is a route. And then inside of here, I mean, this is similar to, I don't want to say it. I don't want to compare. So I'll just say simply how I'm using this. So in this underscore auth.tsx file, it's a route. Let's go down. Where is a route defined? Yeah, it's defined here. And so basically what I'm doing is any routes that require authentication are appearing in this directory that have the exact same name as this file, right? And then what I do here is I check the context to see if I have a user in my context. If there's no user in my context, and remember the user got in my context from my root, I'm fetching my user session. If I have no user in my context, then I redirect back to the default home page. Not the auth home page, but the default home page. I could redirect to login, and I'll do that in my next example, but for here, I'm just taking you back to the home page. So this is the home page. If I don't have a user, and I try to hit one of these routes in this underscore auth, right now the only one that we have is this home. If I try to hit this route and I'm not logged in, auth says, sorry, no user in my context, get out of here, and it redirects me back to home. Otherwise, it just keeps it moving. And to keep it moving, it will go to the route that you're trying to get to, which is my home route, and then I get into my home route. And so here, I should probably change this name to AuthHome, but here you can see I'm creating a route for underscore AuthHome. The component is this AuthHomePage. In the loader, it attempts to get the current user. This is another server function that I've written. This actually pulls all of the user information, but you can see what it does is it gets the session first. If I don't have an email in my session, I could check for ID. Then it says you're not authenticated. It throws the error. The error is handled on the other side, and it redirects. I find the user. You can see here this time I'm getting all of the user information. The ID, email, and role is essential stuff that I just keep in my session. But here I'm trying to get, I mean, just imagine if there was more account-specific information you wanted to get from the user. This is how one might implement it. So let's go back to my auth home. So I load that here in my loader. I return it as user data. I get my user out of the route context. Probably don't need to do that. Questionable, because I'm getting all my data here anyway from the router useLoaded data. I get my user data, and then I'm rendering first name. Here I'm using role, ID, and email from the session, but it could be from either place. Have my login page, and then I have my logout, which I can redirect to here on my router navigate when the user clicks the logout button. So I've covered home, I've covered route, I've covered auth, I've covered index, covered logged in. Let's just quickly cover logged out. Logout when hit. It's pretty straightforward. When you hit the logout route, on the loader, it calls this logout function, which is a server function, and it throws this redirect. And it redirects you back to the home page. Okay, so we've taken you through that flow. Now let's cover one more flow, which I have not covered yet. And that is the create account. So let's go to login. Let's create account. Let's say user 2. We'll just leave the password as password. User, I don't know, let me say 20, because I know I didn't make a user 20. I might have made a user 2. User 20, last name user. Well, first let's try it with so I can show the Zod validation. So I'll remove the last name, create account, I get an error back, and it gives me my error on the string. So let's kind of show how we did that. So So let's go to, since login and create account are the same, we'll come in here. So here's the handle sign up. So on submit, I get my event from my form. I pull all the values. This is related to use server function stuff that I was doing research on. Like I said, I need to kind of follow up on this since this is alpha code, it's changing frequently. But here I'm calling my sign up function and I'm passing in email, password, first name, last name. So I need to go to my sign up function. So here's my sign up function. I'm getting my payload in. I'm checking to see if user already exists. If the user is found, return an error, user already exists. Otherwise, I validating with Zod here. I create my Zod schema. I do a safe parse to see if there's any errors. If it's not successful, then I'm returning this kind of array of Zod issues. Otherwise, I create the password, create the user, create the session, add the info to the session, and redirect. This is actually wrong. I'm realizing now this should redirect to home. Unsuccessful creation of the user. Just caught that real time. Okay, so let's go back to my create account. Let's set this to user 2. So user 20. Password. User 20. User. And let's see. Error occurred. Please try again. Undefined. So it redirected me with the new user, but I got the undefined. See if I can just quickly kind of see what's going on here. Let's go. I suspect it's going to be back here. Let's see what's going on. Handle sign in, handle sign up. Catch error. Oh, it's catching that redirect. And because it's got the redirect, it's throwing this alert up. Let's see, how could I handle that? So handle sign up. It's a redirect. So basically I'll check. So this is not an error object. So let's just do this quick get out of jail free. If, yeah, let's do it this way. So this way I don't have to throw an error. If the instance that comes back is an error, then it'll set my error message. Otherwise, it won't. If it's a redirect, the error won't be an instance of error. It would be something else, and I should be good. So let's just try that one last time. See if my debugging on the fly worked. Otherwise, we will just kind of move on and wrap the video up, and I'll update the source code. So you saw we have my user. Let's log this guy out. Let's log in again, create account. Let's do a user 30, password, user 30, user, create account. All right, so that worked fine. Okay. And so we have our user, and we can log out. And then let's log in as user 30, and we're logged back in. And then let's log out, and then let's show that I cannot get to my home, and I cannot get back in. So that's kind of what I wanted to cover. Like I said, all the source code is here for you. Also, please remember, as I said, that this is alpha stuff. It's changing recently. Actually, when I was working on some of this last night, I saw a new release of Tanstack Start got dropped. There's still some stuff I'm trying to figure out. Like I said, that use server function and the when to use it, when not to use it. Still getting used to the redirects getting thrown as errors and figuring out how to appropriately handle that. But so far, so good. I'm liking what I'm seeing. And as I mentioned also, probably going to dig a little bit deeper in just using regular TanStack Router, finding some interesting stuff in it. I like the way it works. So that's what I got. The next one video that I'm working on, I kind of already started. I was trying to lump it all into this, but I decided to separate it. So this is just basic login and logout. And the next one, I'm going to go a little bit deeper, leveraging the information that I added in my database. Where's my database? Prisma app, Prisma. You can see that I'm tracking this role value, and what I'll show how we can, multiple users can add posts, as you saw. Posts will keep track of who the user is. Users can only see their own posts, and admins can see all the posts. And so I'll kind of show how to use the role in the session and all that stuff together. Probably throw in Tanstack table since we are using table or something like that. But that's where we're going next. Hopefully you found this helpful. Please make sure you like and subscribe. Like I said, I'll upload all the source code. Please check out the source code. Leave comments. I'm learning this too, so any knowledge you can share would be appreciated. Thanks, and bye now.